All right, buckle up, everybody. We're diving deep into the book of Exodus. We're going to unearth the core narrative and pull out all those fascinating details that make this book so powerful and enduring.
It's a long story, a journey of faith, freedom, and law.
Yeah, it's a pretty epic tale, but no worries. We'll navigate the twists and turns together.
From the Israelites' desperate plight in Egypt to their miraculous exodus and encounter with God at Mount Sinai, Exodus really lays the foundation for so much of what we understand about God, humanity, and that whole idea of covenant.
Exactly. So we're starting in Egypt
Yeah.
with the Israelites living under this Pharaoh, and he doesn't exactly have a welcome mat out for them, right?
Right, yeah. This Pharaoh is deeply suspicious of the Israelites, Their numbers are growing, and he sees them as a potential threat.
Yeah, bad.
This fear, it leads him to make a truly horrific decision.
Oh.
The systematic killing of all male Hebrew babies, chilling act of cruelty that sets the stage for the arrival of our main character, Moses.
Okay, so let's talk about this origin story. Moses' mother, she defies Pharaoh's decree, puts her baby in a basket, and sets him adrift on the Nile River.
It's incredible.
Can you imagine the heartbreak and the desperate hope in that action?
It is an incredible act of faith. And then, in a twist of irony, Moses is discovered by Pharaoh's own daughter
Wait.
and raised within the very palace that sought to destroy him. The deliverer of Israel, nurtured by the enemy, it really makes you think about the unexpected ways God works.
It really is like the ultimate undercover operation.
That's a good way to put it.
So Moses grows up in the lap of luxury, completely unaware of his true heritage. But then he has this encounter with God at the burning bush,
Yeah.
and that changes everything.
This burning bush, this is more than just some random wildfire, It's a powerful symbol of God's presence amidst suffering, this visual representation of the divine breaking into the ordinary. And then God reveals his name to Moses, Yahweh, and calls him to lead the Israelites out of slavery.
I can only imagine how overwhelmed Moses must have felt at that point. Like, that's a huge responsibility.
Right.
And he initially resists, right? Questioning his ability to lead and even to speak eloquently. But God reassures him, promises to be with him every step of the way.
Yeah, it's this reminder that God often chooses the unlikely, the seemingly unqualified, to accomplish his purposes. He equips those, he calls, providing strength and guidance for the tasks ahead.
Got that.
And so, armed with God's authority and a staff that's about to become much more than just a walking stick, Moses confronts Pharaoh.
And I'm guessing Pharaoh's not easily swayed.
He is not.
He refuses to let the Israelites go, which leads to one of the most dramatic sequences in all of Scripture,
Yeah.
the 10 plagues.
Yeah, these weren't just random acts of destruction. Each plague was a deliberate challenge to the Egyptian gods, exposing their impotence and highlighting the power of Yahweh over creation. It's like a cosmic showdown, with the fate of a nation hanging in the balance.
Whoa. Okay, so let's unpack a few of these plagues. Turning the Nile to blood, for example, that strikes at the heart of Egyptian religion and daily life. I mean, the Nile was considered sacred, right? Home to their gods. And then there are plagues of frogs, gnats, flies, causing chaos, disrupting the order of things.
Yeah, each plague escalated in severity, targeting different aspects of Egyptian life and belief. The plague of darkness, for example, must have been terrifying, a palpable reminder of Yahweh's power over even the most basic elements of the world. And then finally, the 10th plague.
The big one?
The death of the firstborn strikes the very core of Egyptian family and inheritance structures.
It's devastating. A devastating blow that finally breaks Pharaoh's resistance. He gives in, allows the Israelites to leave. But of course, it wouldn't be a good story without some last-minute drama.
Right, of course not. Pharaoh changes his mind almost as soon as he lets them go, regrets his decision, and sends his army in hot pursuit of the fleeing Israelites.
Oh, no. So this brings us to one of the most iconic scenes in the Bible. The parting of the Red Sea.
It's a big one.
Imagine millions of people, terrified and desperate, trapped between the pursuing Egyptian army and this vast expanse of the sea. It seems like a hopeless situation.
It really does. But then, in a moment of divine intervention, God parts the waters, creating this dry path for the Israelites to cross.
Wow.
It's breathtaking. It's a breathtaking display of power and a defining moment in their journey.
It's a literal walking on water moment, cementing their faith in Yahweh and forever separating them from their life of slavery. The Israelites have escaped oppression, but their journey, well, it's just beginning.
That's right. Now they face the challenges of the wilderness, a place of testing and transformation.
Oh boy. That's going to be interesting. But before we delve into that, what strikes you about this initial part of the Exodus story? What resonates with you the most?
Well, I'm always struck by,
We left the Israelites standing on the shores of freedom, having just witnessed that incredible power of God at the Red Sea. You'd think after such an epic escape, their faith would be unshakable.
right, you would think.
But as we're about to see, the wilderness throws them some serious curveballs.
Yeah, it's interesting, how quickly their awe and gratitude seem to fade. They find themselves in this harsh, unforgiving environment.
Yeah, and their thoughts drift back to the comforts of Egypt.
Exactly. They start grumbling, they complain, they even start to question Moses' leadership.
Oh, wow. It's kind of like a be careful what you wish for situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
They longed for freedom, but now they're faced with these realities of survival.
Definitely.
And what's their biggest concern?
Food. Always food.
Makes sense.
It's understandable, their fear. But it reveals a real lack of trust in God's provision. They seem to have forgotten the plagues, the parted sea, the very hand that delivered them.
That's so true.
But God doesn't abandon them. Instead, he provides in a way that's both miraculous and consistent.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Here comes the manna.
The what?
Manna, this bread-like substance that appears every morning like dew on the ground.
Wow, okay.
It's described as being sweet, flaky, and it becomes their daily sustenance for 40 years.
40 years. That's a pretty impressive pantry supply.
Right. The manna was a tangible reminder of God's faithfulness. It appeared every day, except for the Sabbath,
Of course.
teaching them to trust in his timing and to observe a day of rest.
I like that.
There are even specific instructions about how much to gather, a lesson in moderation and dependence on God's daily provision.
Oh, that's interesting. I love that detail about the double portion appearing on the sixth day.
Oh, yeah.
So they wouldn't have to gather on the Sabbath?
Yeah.
It's like God built this rhythm of rest right into their weekly routine.
It wasn't just about physical sustenance either. God was also shaping their character.
Yeah.
Teaching them to rely on him, to follow his instructions, to live in community.
That's a good point.
It's all connected.
Okay, speaking of instructions, the next major event in Exodus is the giving of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai. This is where God establishes the foundation of his covenant with Israel. And it's a scene straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster.
You can say that again. We're talking thunder, lightning, smoke. A trumpet blast so loud, it probably shook the very mountains.
Wow.
This was a sensory experience designed to evoke awe and fear. A clear sign they were in the presence of something holy and powerful.
Makes sense. So amidst all this dramatic display, God speaks the Ten Commandments to Moses. And these 10 principles, they cover such a wide range of human behavior.
From worshiping the one true God to honoring parents, respecting life, being honest.
You're quite the list.
And these weren't just arbitrary rules. They were designed to establish a just and compassionate society, one that recognized the dignity of all people and fostered right relationships both with God and with one another. They served as a blueprint for moral and social order, a foundation for a life lived in covenant with God.
That's a good point. But receiving the law and actually living it out, those are two very different things.
Oh, tell me about it.
And unfortunately, the Israelites seem to have a bit of a track record when it comes to, forgetting their promises and falling back into old patterns.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme, right? So while Moses is up on the mountain receiving the Ten Commandments, the people down below, they start to get impatient. They get fearful.
I can only imagine.
And they decide to take matters into their own hands. And this is where we get that infamous story of the golden calf.
Ah, yes.
They melt down all their jewelry. They create this golden calf.
Like a physical idol.
An idol, something they can see and touch, something that feels more tangible, more controllable than the invisible God who brought them out of Egypt.
It's a pretty shocking turn of events.
It is. And it's a stark reminder of how easily we can stray from true worship,
For sure. So Moses, descending from the mountain with those tablets of the law, he's understandably furious, right?
Oh, yeah.
He smashes the tablets.
That's a powerful image.
A display of anger, confronts the people for their disobedience.
It's a tense moment, a breach in the covenant that could have had devastating consequences.
I bet. But even in their rebellion, God's mercy shines through, right?
It does. Moses intercedes for the people, and God forgives them.
Wow.
The covenant is renewed, and God provides further instructions for the building of the tabernacle.
Okay, the tabernacle.
A portable sanctuary that will become the center of their worship and a visible symbol of his presence among them.
So the Israelites have experienced liberation, received God's law, even stumbled in their faith. But now they are about to embark on this new chapter, one that involves creating a sacred space where heaven and earth meet.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The tabernacle represents a profound shift in their relationship with God. It's no longer just about following rules or relying on miraculous provision. It's about encountering the divine presence in a tangible, structured way.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. But before we delve into those intricacies of the tabernacle and what it reveals about God's desire to dwell among his people, let's take a moment to reflect.
Yeah, I like that.
What aspect of this part of the Exodus story has resonated with you the most? What are you pondering as we move into this next chapter?
I keep thinking about...
Okay, so we've journeyed with the Israelites from slavery to freedom through the trials of the wilderness, and now we've arrived at this pivotal moment.
Right, the construction of the tabernacle.
This wasn't just any tent, though. This was a portable sanctuary, meticulously designed to be the dwelling place of God among his people.
Yeah, it's fascinating how detailed God's instructions were for building this thing.
It's a great...
Every element, from the materials, the dimensions, to the furnishings,
everything.
It was all imbued with symbolic meaning. It wasn't just about creating a functional space. This was about reflecting the very nature of God and his relationship with humanity.
It's like God was giving them a blueprint, not just for a building, but for understanding how to approach him, how to worship, how to live in covenant with him.
You got it. So let's walk through some of the key features.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, so the tabernacle, it was essentially a tent-like structure made of acacia wood covered with layers of fine linens and animal skins.
Very fancy tent.
Right. It was designed to be both beautiful and portable, reflecting both the majesty of God and the Israelites' nomadic lifestyle.
Because they were still on the move.
Right.
Journeying toward the promised land, so it needed to be something they could easily assemble and disassemble.
Yeah, they couldn't exactly be lugging around a marble temple.
Right. But it was also meant to be awe-inspiring, a visible reminder of God's presence among them.
Absolutely. So we're talking gold, silver, bronze, vibrant woven fabrics. Skilled artisans, chosen by God and filled with his spirit, crafted every detail with such care and precision.
Yeah, I remember reading about how the people were so eager to contribute to the tabernacle's construction.
Oh, yeah.
They actually brought more than enough materials. It just speaks to their desire to create a dwelling place for God, a tangible expression of their devotion.
That outpouring of generosity must have been incredible to witness.
It really must have.
Now, the tabernacle, it was divided into two main sections. The holy place and the most holy place, also known as the Holy of Holies.
Holy of Holies. Okay, this is where the sense of awe and reverence really intensifies.
You're telling me this inner sanctum, the most sacred space in the entire tabernacle, where God's presence was said to dwell in this unique and powerful way?
Intense.
Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, and even then, only once a year on the Day of Atonement to offer sacrifices for the sins of the people.
So this was a place shrouded in mystery, holiness, really emphasizing the separation between humanity and the divine.
Absolutely. And at the very heart of the Holy of Holies was the Ark of the Covenant.
The Ark of the Covenant. I feel like even if you've never read the Bible, you've probably heard of the Ark. It's like this iconic symbol of God's presence and power.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking a wooden chest overlaid with gold containing the tablets of the Ten Commandments.
No way.
A jar of manna and Aaron's staff that had miraculously budded.
Wow. Okay, so it represented God's law, his provision, and his power, all contained within this sacred vessel.
It's like a treasure chest of God's faithfulness and covenant with his people.
It really is. And on top of the ark was the mercy seat, also made of pure gold. It was here, above the ark, that God's presence would manifest, and where the high priest would sprinkle the blood of the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement.
It's powerful imagery. God's holiness, his justice, and his willingness to forgive.
Yeah, the blood symbolized atonement, covering the sins of the people and restoring their relationship with God.
Powerful stuff. Now, the holy place, which was accessible to the priests, also contained some significant furnishings. There was the golden lampstand,
Okay.
which provided light for the sanctuary, symbolizing God's illuminating presence.
I love that. The symbolism of light dispelling darkness. It speaks to God's guidance and the way his truth brings clarity to our lives.
Totally. There was also the table of showbread, representing God's constant provision for his people.
Okay.
The bread was always fresh, symbolizing God's ongoing faithfulness and care.
I like that.
And then there was the altar of incense,
Incense.
where fragrant offerings were burned, the rising smoke. It was seen as a visual representation of the prayers of the people reaching heaven.
Be beautiful.
You know, every element of the tabernacle, from its structure to its furnishings, was carefully designed to reflect God's character, his covenant with his people, and the way in which they could approach him in worship.
So the Israelites, after all their trials and triumphs, they finally complete the construction of the tabernacle. And then the book of Exodus ends with this incredible scene, right?
Oh, yeah.
The glory of the Lord, described as a cloud, descends and fills the tabernacle.
It's breathtaking. A visible sign that God has accepted their offering and chosen to dwell among them. The tabernacle, in all its intricate detail and symbolism, becomes a meeting place between heaven and earth. A place where God's presence is felt and experienced in a tangible way.
This journey through Exodus has been incredible. We've witnessed the Israelites' liberation from slavery, their encounters with God's power and provision, the establishment of the covenant, and the creation of this sacred space where God chose to dwell among them.
It's a story that continues to resonate with us today, you know. It speaks to our own longing for freedom, our need for God's guidance and presence, and the challenge of living in covenant with him.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Exodus, I'm left with this sense of awe and wonder at God's faithfulness and his desire to be in relationship with us. What about you? What stands out to you as we reflect on this incredible journey?
I'm struck by the enduring relevance of Exodus. Those themes of liberation, covenant, and God's dwelling presence, they speak to the deepest longings of the human heart. Exodus invites us to consider our own journeys of faith, our encounters with God's grace and mercy, and our ongoing challenge to live in obedience and gratitude for all he has done.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Exodus. May this ancient story continue to inspire and challenge us as we seek to understand God's heart and live in the fullness of his presence.